What's going on, guys? Magdallan here. Today I want to talk about what is probably my build of the league. The other day when I released my build guide for the Death's Oath Occultist, my boy Atlas popped into the comments and told me I should give Winter Orb Slayer a go. And I had some currency laying around and I was kind of, fluctuating between whether or not I wanted to quit for the league or if I wanted to do some more projects or just start kind of preparing for the Last Epoch launch later on in February. And so I figured why not? I'd give it a try. And it turns out this build is absolutely nutty. It has everything in it that I enjoy about the game. Ridiculous AoE scaling, pretty good damage, fantastic clear. You're running really fast. It's got lots of interesting ways that the gear works together to make the build function. And it's all around just been an absolute blast playing this thing. And almost nobody's playing it. I think the last time I looked, it was like 0.2% of the league is actually playing the skill as far as the POE Ninja stats are concerned. And it's not cheap. It cost me several hundred divines. I don't know exactly how many. I've kind of just been buying stuff and selling stuff from old characters and, the kind of end of league deal where the currency just doesn't mean as much since you have a lot of gear already that you can sell off. And so I'm not keeping track, down to the divine, how much I'm spending on any given item. But certainly not a cheap build. And huge disclaimer, I did not come up with any of this. I was looking at several of the guys on Ninja as well as getting advice from, as I said, my buddy Atlas. And I actually had a really cool, more than one cool actually, trading interaction with people when I was buying the gems and a few of the pieces of gear. People really like this build, and I ended up more than once just sitting there for 15, 20 minutes, bullshitting with people in whispers about the build and the way that I was setting it up versus the way that they had set it up. And one guy in particular, a guy named Brock, I think was the character's name, was really helpful. Sold me a bunch of his gems all at once, and so saved me some trading time there. And then we kind of went back and forth talking about the build for quite some time and even caught up a couple times after that in subsequent days. So some really wholesome trading interaction there. And altogether, I didn't come up with any of this. I think I understand the way everything works. So I'm going to offer a guide in the sense of I'm going to tell you all the pieces of gear and the gems and go over the tree and all that stuff. But I am by no means the inventor of the build. And I really haven't done a whole lot to kind of make it my own. I sort of just took what I found and put the build together. But I thought since it was so much fun and there just aren't very many people playing it, I thought I would go ahead and make a video about it so that if you are kind of at that late league stage where you're thinking whether or not you want to make another character, you've got currency laying around, and you're not really dead set on, I have to be omega juicing, to try and farm currency. You just want to play something that's fun, mess around. This is the absolute perfect build for that type of situation. And so let's jump in. The easy stuff, kill the bandits. The Pantheon, I am running Brine King pretty much as always. And then Soul of Aberath because I always am doing red altars. I don't think I've done a single blue altar this entire league. And I guess just as a primer, Winter Orb is channeled, and so you kind of hold it down for a little bit, and then you are able to just sort of run around as it ticks down, and it will automatically shoot the enemies. And then you'll need to, rejuice it up every so often. I have tended to just hold the button down as I run, and then when I stop, periodically it just refills. So not as passive as the Death's Oath character. There are a few buttons that you have to maintain, and the single target, in my setup at least, it was pretty comparable to the Death's Oath character, but again, this is not a crazy single target boss melter, do your super abyss juiced crazy maps where you're, lagging everything out and whatever. It's not really that kind of a build, but as far as more or less a kind of quasi walking simulator, blast through a map in, sub 2 minutes and pick up your loot and be on your way, fantastic. As far as the gear is concerned, there's a lot going on. I'm probably going to miss a few of the finer points, but I will try and go over the basic concept. So this is a Ralakesh's Impatience build. And so the function there is that you count as having the maximum amount of endurance, frenzy, and power charges. Very important, because a lot of the other pieces of gear would typically be pretty negative in terms of their impact on your build, but because we always count as having the maximum number, we sort of bypass a lot of those downsides. For the shield, we are running Malachi's Loop. So as you can see, we get 2 extra power charges there, but there is some negatives associated with that. I think you can probably get to a point where you can work, shock immunity into the build. I think I saw MB Extreme had a video where he had a way that he was becoming immune to shock, but I didn't worry about that. I'm probably getting shocked. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And obviously, we're also going to get a bunch of increased spell damage per power charge there. For the amulet, we're going to run Badge of the Brotherhood. Pretty standard. I think really the only thing that I care about is your maximum frenzy charges is equal to your maximum power charges. So again, we're just kind of stacking them up so that the boots can make us, count as having the maximum. For the helmet, you're going to run a Will Clash with a +1 maximum power charge implicit. These are relatively expensive, but it wasn't crazy. And then we are going to run Replica Restless Ward for the chest piece, another slot where there is some perceived potential negative here with -2 endurance and frenzy charges, but the reality is we don't care about that because the other gear is making it so we always count as maximum and we're good to go. And so the chest piece gives us a huge amount of movement speed and life regeneration that allows us to use Righteous Fire with the build. So, and for the weapon, we're going to use a Void Battery, pretty standard. Gives us an extra power charge, some global crit, as well as some increased spell damage per power charge. And then for the gloves, there's some variants. There are some more budget-friendly versions of the build that I've been told about that actually work really well. And I think you can throw in is it Combs gloves, I believe, that allow you to kind of mess around with the rage mechanic and get Berserk going. I didn't mess around with any of that. So I grabbed a pair of gloves here that had some intelligence. Could definitely have some more intelligence. I've got 1 point on the tree that is allocated to a 30 intelligence node. So that's one potential upgrade that I could go for, is essentially the same pair of gloves, but with, 45, 50 intelligence instead of 23. But we've got some life on there, some health regeneration, some cold resistance that I don't need, and then the 2 lines that matter: increased damage with hits against chilled enemies and increased damage while leeching, because of course we're going to be leeching pretty much all the time. Belt, we're going to run a Mage Blood. And then this is the ring that I settled on. You can obviously go for a power charge ring, but that's getting too rich for my blood. Those are, even the base for those is really crazy, and then trying to get one that has good mods on it or trying to craft one, not something I was interested in doing. So we went for one that's got increased LA damage in the implicit. And then we've got some cold damage, some life, little mana regen, some all elemental resistances, chaos res, and the important line is the 2 to 4 added cold damage per frenzy charge, and then just a generic damage craft. For the other ring, we're going to run Calandra's Touch. I'm just going to mirror that ring, so we're running 2 of them effectively. And then lastly, as far as the flasks, we're going to run a Bottled Faith, and then I've got a Quicksilver here. I'm running a Jade. I am running a Quartz Flask. You can work phasing into the build either on the tree, I believe, if you want to spend some points. You can get phasing Chance on a Charm, I believe. Or the expensive route would be to work haste into the build via RMR on all of your corrupted magic jewels, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And then you would get a Watcher's Eye that takes care of that, and then you could swap this flask out for something else. But again, I didn't care. I'm fine just using the spell suppression and phasing flask. And then lastly, we've got a silver flask. As far as the gems are concerned, we're going to run increased duration, cast when damage taken, and immortal call in our weapon. In the shield, we're going to run increased duration, divine blessing, and zealotry. So that is a button that you're going to have to push. As you can see, we're running Eldritch Battery, so we can easily afford that. In the helmet, I'm running an Awakened Increased Area of Effect, my Sniper's Mark, which we are manually casting when we come across a tanky rare or a boss. Then we're going to run a level 4 Enhance. And I'm running Righteous Fire, level 21. And I mean, look at the size of this Righteous Fire. I mean, that's stupid. It's it doesn't get any more fun than that. I mean, there's a couple ways I can think of where, you know, if you wanted to make the build less effective, you could use a few more points or fit in another cluster setup or whatever and get the AoE a little bit bigger. But as far as on a functional character, I think this is the biggest Righteous Fire area that I have ever played with. And I mean, it literally makes it so it's this thing's hard to drive through the maps because I can't see the floor. And so you might not want to use the Celestial MTX, but I mean, when your AoE is this big and you own the Celestial MTX, you may as well fire it up. And then in the chest piece for our main skill setup, we're going to run Awaken Greater Multiple Projectiles. This is pretty expensive. I think I paid 90 div for this. Then we're going to run Winter Orb. We're going to run Infused Channeling, Ice Bite, Power Charge on Critical, and Awaken Cold Pen. And then the chest piece my buddy Atlas gave me, so you don't necessarily need the +2 implicit, but obviously, as I said, the single target is relatively low, so anything you can do to amp that up is to your benefit. And so that's why I think in this case it's definitely worth it to grab the Awaken Greater Multiple Projectiles. And then in my gloves, I've got a Portal Gem. I have a Frost Bomb that I throw down if I'm doing a harvest that's got a really nasty mob, or again for your bosses or tanky rares, that type of stuff. And then a Flame Dash. And then lastly, in the boots, we've got Herald of Ice, Grace, Hatred, and Enlighten. Now, the more expensive version than the one that I'm running even, you would, as I said, run a bunch of RMR on the Corrupted Magic Jewels on the tree, and you can work in Haste as well as all of the other auras that I have so far mentioned. And then, again, you can get a Watcher's Eye that then gives you phasing while affected by Haste, and you're good to go. However, the build is so fast and the damage is fine, I didn't feel like I needed to go that deep as far as getting the RMR and all that to get Haste in the build. And so this has worked well for me, but again, if that is something that you want, it is totally doable in the build if you stack enough RMR to get one more aura in there. Now let's jump over and look at the tree. As far as our Ascendancy, we are going to take the maximum endurance charge is equal to your maximum power charge and +1 maximum frenzy charge node. We are going to take Bane of Legends and Headsman for the fantastic 20% culling strike. And then lastly, we are going to take Brutal Fervor to make our leech not end when we hit max life. So Slayer's given us a lot in the build. I know there were some other variants that use, I think you can run this as an occultist, but the Slayer has worked out really well. I'm very happy with that. And then our Wildwood, this is where we are scaling all of our AoE. So each one of our charms is going to have 6% increased area of effect per endurance charge. And then you want, in my case, I needed 1, but you may need 2 that have +5 to chaos resist per endurance charge. In my case, I went for 8% of life leech is instant, or I guess it's just generic leech. So if you have energy shield leech as well, it will work for that. And then lastly, I went for 18% increased life regeneration rate. And so with all of that, we are somewhere in the neighborhood of, I can't remember exactly what the value is. It's like 298, something like that. Yeah, 281 it looks like. So a lot of AoE scaling there. You could probably, as I said, push it slightly higher, but this has been more than plenty for me. And then going over the actual nodes, we are going to come down through here, down to the bottom of the tree. We're going to slot in our first corrupted jewel there. And be aware that when you hover over these, it does pop up with this secondary tooltip that'll give you the values as they appear based on the power of your adorned jewel. We're going to come through these life nodes here. We're going to swing to the bottom and grab Disciple of the Unyielding as well as Disciple of the Slaughter. Coming over this way, we've got our next Corrupted Magic Jewel. And as you can see, I'm going for either multi with elemental skills, multi with cold skills, or global crit multi, and then life. And then depending on where your life value is at and where you feel comfortable, you can also just go for 2 of the aforementioned crit multi mods. I'm going to come up here for Mage Bane. Over here, there's my Adorned. You could go for one that's closer to 150. This works fine for me. I already had it from the Death's Oath character, so I just went ahead and plucked it from that character and threw it in here. Swing this way, and here is another of our Corrupted Jewels. This is one of the ones that has 2 of the crit multi modifiers. We're going to swing in here, and we are going to take Inner Conviction via Militant Faith. And you'll have to pay attention to the exact value of Devotion. I grabbed one extra little node here so that I could have, I think, 70 in total. And so that is giving me a fair amount of increased area damage and increased elemental damage. There is my 130 intelligence node that I'd be happy to unspec if I could figure out a way to do that. I guess, as I said earlier, I could upgrade the gloves, but we're going to come over here, and here is my large cluster. And then I am going with Magnifier and Vast Power for the medium clusters. And then there's our next Corrupted Jewel. And there's another one. Then we're going to come up here, grab some life. There's another Corrupted Jewel. And we're going to grab the power charge there. Ghost Dance. I take this one node for some Energy Shield Leech. We're going to grab Doomcast and the Mastery for increased critical strike against enemies on full life. You don't necessarily need this. I found that at my damage level, it just led to more reliable shatter explosions as I was running through the map. We're going to grab Written in Blood there. Swing up this way for Eldritch Battery. And come around here. We're going to slot in our Watcher's Eye here. The only node that, the only mod rather, that is super important is the plus 1.71% to critical strike chance when affected by hatred. And these were fairly expensive because, you know, it is what it is. Hatred, Watcher's Eyes are just always expensive. Another power charge. We're going to grab Deep Thoughts as well as the Mastery for RMR. Grab some life, and then we're going to grab Disciple of the Forbidden and the Mastery for 3% increased damage per Endurance, Frenzy, or Power Charge. And then we are going to anoint Overcharge for yet another power charge there. And so, as you can see, we sit at 10 each of Power, Endurance, and Frenzy charges. And again, you could go for a Power Charge ring if you have... I think they're almost a mirror for the base. But if you have that kind of cash, then you could go up to 12 there. And I'm not sure if there's any way to really get any higher than 12, but I am not an expert on power charge stacking. And that is basically the tree. And now I guess I will throw in a map and we'll do a quick showcase, and then I will send you on your way. Just throw in a strand. I've been messing around with a little bit of Delirium Orb farming. I want to see if that is lucrative here in the late league. Now, a couple things to mention. When you go into the Wildwood, do not activate the Righteous Fire because it is so huge and stupid that you will not be able to see any of the trails on the ground. I am not going to worry a great deal about how much juice I get on this particular instance here, but if you are juicing or just doing your regular maps, if you fire up the RF when you run in here, you're going to have a bad time. It's going to cover everything up. I mean, you could always just take the gem out if you wanted to turn it off, but I just leave it off. just going to kind of run around here a little bit and grab some. Well, here's a good. You can see the single target is not stellar, but once you get the mark on the enemy, it's pretty good. And of course, I didn't have my zealotry running and so on and so forth. But all right, we'll call that good. So we come out. I'm going to pop my Righteous Fire. And we're going to go ahead and stack up the Winter Orb, activate our Zealotry, and then we are off. And it just blows everything up. Again, the Righteous Fire makes it so hard to see that sometimes I do end up leaving a monster behind here and there, but like I said, I'm at the point in the league where I'm kind of just mapping for fun. I'm not really even farming for currency. It's just kind of run through the map. If I get some crazy drop, I pick it up, but I'm to the point now where most stuff I'm just leaving on the ground anyway. So as you can see, the AoE on the Herald is also pretty ridiculous. I think that's probably the largest that I've ever had. I ran a version of Death's Oath some time ago where I scaled the AoE on Herald of Ash pretty high, but I don't know if it was quite as crazy as these Herald of Ice explosions are this time around. And there we are, we're at the boss here. So I'm going to re-up on my Zealotry, I'm going to run in, stack up the Winter Orb. Let's find the boss here. There we go. So as you can see, the Leech is really good. I'm going to throw a Frost Bomb down. You know, not bad. I mean, again, as far as you're just having fun, blasting maps, you just want to play a silly end of the league build, I couldn't be happier with this. And I will definitely be playing it again in the future. If this was any league other than, what is going on with this mob? What's the deal here? Okay, we're just going to leave that guy. If this was a normal league in terms of, you weren't sort of being pushed into juicing every map, this build would absolutely destroy. I mean, I've done a few maps where I just didn't do any wisp juice at all and just kind of Alcan Go style just ran through it. I mean, it just annihilates everything. And so next league, depending on what the mechanic is, I actually might play this build much earlier on in the league just to have some more fun with it, because it really just is enjoyable. That's the moral of the story. Is I kind of thought I was almost done with the league, and then here we are with this really crazy, fun, wacky build that I'm enjoying so much that even though I don't really have the desire to farm for more currency or really map that much, I find myself still, logging in and wanting to play a little bit more because, I mean, this league has just been crazy. And I've had so much easy currency, respective of the number of hours that I've been playing, that it just felt like this is a league where I want to make sure and play all the builds that I want to play, because I just don't think there's going to be another league that's quite like this in the foreseeable future. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm guessing this is going to be one of those leagues that we're all going to be looking back on later and going, man, that shit was really crazy. I wish I'd have played this build, in that league. And I want to reduce the number of builds that I have to put on that list going forward. And so from here, if I was going to make one more character, I think it would have to be just a straight up single target bosser. I've never made a character like that. I'm not at all sure what skill I would use. It's not something that I haven't bossed almost at all, period, let alone had a dedicated build for it. So if you have any recommendations for what the best, bosser build for 300 divine or less, somewhere in that range, then by all means let me know in the comments. But that is all I've got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And I will see you guys in the next video. I appreciate you.